my background is more in pharmaceutical and the healthcare space. So I had kind of a more corporate life before I entered the entrepreneurial space. And I, super excited to share with you guys today more about that journey. And I do think that bootstrapping is a little bit taboo as a topic because as a founder, and even before we started Pantys, I talked to a lot of other founders, both in Brazil and the US, friends from business school, and there seems to be kind of a very set path of venture funding that I feel like founders are almost brainwashed that they have to go this path where it's like, oh, well, you create an amazing pitch deck and then you raise money and then you hire this huge team and then you go. But I don't know if that model is very beneficial for founders, because I think that especially if, you have a concept that you can prove, and a lot of businesses, you can without getting a lot of funding. I think that model really benefits more the funds that are looking to either scale or kill the business as quickly as possible. And, now obviously with, there's a lot of crazy founders out there, like the Uber founder and WeWork and We Crashed. I'm sure a lot of you have watched some of those exciting series, but, a lot of, risks that come into play as the business grows, where there's, strong interest also to maybe out the founders or change their role in some way. So anyway, so I'm excited to talk a little bit about how we did that, and thanks for the time.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, based on what you were just saying, is that something that you went into building the company with that mindset, or was that something that sort of evolved along the way? Like, did you know you were going to be bootstrapping from the beginning, or did you just kind of start to see these like venture capitalists circling and you were like, I don't know if I want to do that?
So definitely not. It was never my intention to bootstrap the company. I would say we did it kind of accidentally. But when we started the business, I had just come out of working with a venture builder. So I spent some time working with the founder of Rue La La that opened a venture builder in Boston. And even from Brazil, I was working on kind of a Brazilian lingerie concept for the US. And we saw a little bit of how, when you start out with investors, in that case, we co-founded a business with this venture builder. And then when we went to close all the 27 documents, or however many documents there were to actually create the company, they came back and asked for a different equity agreement than what we had agreed on, almost a year before that. I mean, it had been really a long time that we had been working on the concept. And so I do think that there are a lot of investors that are very founder friendly, but I do think that you give up a lot when you start a company already with investors. So I think after that experience, I was kind of, in this moment of, I'm going to just find something else that I can do, and found a co-founder in Brazil that had experience in lingerie manufacturing. So it was a very specific area that they could add value. And we said, oh, let's get together enough money to get the business launched and create like a very simple kind of plan for, products. What kind of are we looking for? Brands and communications. What are we looking for? And I would say that we invested more in the brand and communication than the products in the beginning. Our actual product development took a really long time because it was over a year, because it's a new technology, and we didn't want to have just kind of a copycat menstrual underwear brand. Obviously, brands already existed in the US and Australia and Europe and other places. So we really focused on actually trying to create our own technology, and we did patent research, which is like, I have all these screenshots on my iPad of like going through the patents that are registered associated with absorbent underwear technologies and absorbent apparel technologies. So a lot of that research, we had to do ourselves at the beginning to even understand the landscape. And then obviously we hired lawyers to help us, professionalize our technology. But in the development of the technology, we wanted to make sure we had something that we could own. And we actually just got our US patent 3 weeks ago, which it took almost 5 years. It took a really long time. But it's a huge asset for the company to say that we have actually IP and a technology that's differentiated enough to protect it in a commercial standpoint. So I'd say we started really just focusing on create a good technology. The first samples of products that we made were horrible, like not only were they not comfortable, but they weren't attractive. And so we just really had to focus on making the best products that we could. Hold on 1 second.
We got some feedback. Yeah, Jill made the comment, 4.5 years into a patent, just submitted final claims yesterday. That is so exciting. I mean, I did not realize how long that could, that process could take, but amazing to have to go through all that. But I imagine very rewarding to get to that point.
Just 1 second, because we're having some adjustments in the office. I think this is lunchtime, and they're doing so. I'll just be right back. 1 second.
Oh, no worries. So did you guys, while Emily's away, did you have any specific questions that you were thinking of ahead of time before this call, or any questions about what Emily's working on? Feel free to come off mute or add them in the chat, or if you had anything to add while we're waiting on her. I think it's interesting that she was like accidentally bootstrapping.
And I was probably pretty similar. Like I didn't know what investors were. We solved our own problem, and it turned into a business on accident. So I didn't really know that was the thing we were doing. That we've been funding it with a day job. Like probably in the last year or two is when I'm learning. Like, oh, people actually go to strangers for money. Okay.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like, even I don't know if you were on the Shark Tank panel we had a couple months ago, but they talked about how a lot of those deals fall through. And it's just like, you never, I mean, it sounds like a great idea, but then you never know if they're going to actually be true to their word, like Emily was saying. So, oh, are you back? Did you?
We're all set. We're all
oh,
set.
okay. Sorry. So yeah, we were just.
There are real world problems here that we're reconstructing our office, and sometimes I never know when that's going to happen. So apologies.
Oh, no worries. No worries. So yeah, we were just talking about how that process is like it's kind of crazy to learn that the investors are really, in it for themselves, and not necessarily going to stick to what they said they would initially, when you're talking about the
you just never know. Yeah. And I think it's like marrying someone, like when you get an investor on board, you have to really feel like they're 100% aligned with your vision, and that they trust you 200%, even more. So, and I think that that's something that, especially, now we have operations in the UK and in France and in Germany. We're not in the US as much, but we will be on Amazon very soon in the US, probably in the next week or so. But so mostly Latin America and Europe. But in Latin America, we had so many challenges with, we talked to like all the big funds here, and a lot of sexism, a lot of like, even ageism. That it's not that I'm so young, but I'm not a 50-plus-year-old executive or something. So, and neither is my co-founder. So just a lot of inherent challenges where people were skeptical, or even, almost all the investors are male, and we have a very female-focused product and solution. And so there were some challenges at the beginning where it was kind of like, even if we had wanted to raise money as a Brazilian-based company, probably it would not have been easy for the category of product that we have as well. So it's kind of that combination, Well,
and I think that's why I think this conversation is kind of timely too, because it's not easy right now to be raising funds, and you may have wanted to raise money, but finding the right investor that, like you said, is a good fit, that is going to trust you, and that is going to be fully aligned with your mission, may be really hard to find. And so you may be involuntarily bootstrapping or accidentally bootstrapping, as you mentioned. So one of the things you also said was that you had invested a lot in the brand and the communication early on. Is that something that you would do again, or what's your recommendation for how to build kind of that momentum?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think there's two different ways of doing it. One is, and maybe if you're an app or more of a technology-based company, you can even get a beta product out and start getting feedback, and then use that feedback to evolve a product, or even get some like 3 or 4, if it's a kind of B2B solution, pilot partners that you can work with over a few months to get feedback to evolve your product. And then later you can do a full rebranding and say, okay, now it's called X and here's the whole new brand, and you invest in the brand in another moment. For us, because we were the first mover in a market, and Brazil already has a huge lingerie market, and I think that it's also a market where there's a lot of excitement about what's new, and we knew that we had to have something that would have a lot of like that would be very desirable for the customers. And so we really focused on like, it has to be cool. It can't just be like a pharmacy product that's functional, and it has to also be attractive, and it has to be extremely comfortable. And so we really focused a lot on, and we were kind of a one product business too. So we launched with 4 styles of underwear in 2 colors. And so it was really, really focused launch, and we had to make that really exciting. And it's hard to do that without creating like storytelling around the brand, and really well-crafted photography and well-crafted storytelling on the site. We focused a lot on the tone of voice of the brand as well. Since it's an intimate product, we really focused on talking like a friend. And at that time, now there are a lot of brands that do it, but at that time it wasn't that common here, that brands were more kind of professional and separate from the consumer. And we wanted to kind of break that and be more like, more close to the consumer in a lot of different ways. So we focused on that at the beginning, and we launched with a very strong PR approach. And so in all the newspapers and magazines, and we partnered with probably the best fashion PR company in Brazil. And I think they were a huge part of our first success, because we sold out of all of our products in the first month. And then we had a back order for probably 3 or 4 months going up to almost Christmas time. And at that time, it was a horrible problem. Like, we were so stressed out thinking, oh, this is horrible. Like, we created all this demand and now we have no products. And when we purchased our products from the factories, they said, oh, you're never going to sell this product. It's like a huge volume. Like, they work with big companies like Calvin Klein, and they said, like, there's no way that you're going to sell these products. And then when we sold everything, they were kind of like, oh, well, we don't have space to like manufacture for you.
You're like, oh.
So it was really stressful, but at the end, I mean, it was a good thing. It was a good problem to have in the end. And we found ways to, now at that time, I think e-commerce was 4% of commerce in Brazil was e-commerce, totally different from the US. For the US now, everybody buys everything online. Now Brazil's around 12%, so it's grown a lot, but it's still pretty small in comparison. So we had other challenges around like trust, like people trusting an e-commerce site. Is it legitimate? Am I going to get my product? And so when we went on pre-order, it then became even more challenging, because it was kind of like, okay, trust us, we're a real company and we make amazing products, and we will deliver your product in 1 month or something. So it was a lot of, but I think the good news is that we had a lot of great feedback from influencers and celebrities, and organically, like, we sent products to a lot of people in the market. And since we weren't paying people at that time to talk about the product, and they saw it as more of a content for them, we got a lot of really helpful momentum from the community as well. So I think that's something that's probably changed a lot now, because Instagram engagement's fallen a lot, and there's a lot of challenges now that everybody's trying to be a TikTok at the moment. But at that time, that really helped to grow the brand pretty quickly.
Yeah, because what was that, like 4 or 5 years ago? When was that?
2007, almost 5 years ago.
Yeah, because now it's like, I mean, people talk about sending free product to influencers to get them to talk about it, and influencers like they
don't even know boxes sometimes. Yeah.
They want the big bucks.
Yeah. And I think on the other side, they're not getting paid as much as they used to, because their engagement has fallen, and people are not seeing that as such a productive channel for media. So they're less open to do free stuff if they're also getting paid less, I think,
Yeah.
which is a big difference.
But I think that, I mean, I think what's important that I hear you saying is that, I mean, you were finding ways that work at the time. And so that was one of the best ways to get the word of mouth going, was to work with people that could try the product and start talking about it. And, you know, also having to educate people on how to use e-commerce or to get them to trust you to buy products. I mean, those were slightly different issues that you were dealing with at the time that people would be dealing with now, but you know, you saw ahead of time that that was going to be something worth investing your time in, and it was a way for you to get your product seen. And so, you know, maybe that exact advice isn't going to hold true for like, oh yeah, find some influencers to talk about your product. But I think it's, I mean, I didn't I didn't tell her to say this, people, but I love that you're talking about how the brand and the storytelling behind the brand was such a big part of how you helped get the word out about the product, because I think that's something that's kind of foundational that you can use no matter what channel you're using to talk about it.
No, absolutely. I think the brand is the biggest asset that we have as a business. I mean, I think your brand is your reputation. It's just like as a person or a professional, your reputation is everything. And it's really important to build authentic relationships with your customers. It's really important to share the values that you have as a company. And we're always really open as a company to exchange with our community. So we see sometimes, I mean, any brands, you're going to have critique from your community. You're going to have people that say, oh, you know, like when we launched, we had a lot of people that said, oh, you guys are such a sustainable brand because you avoid menstrual waste. But like, what about your life cycle of your product? Like, tell us about your product life cycle. And then, or what kind of raw materials do you use? Like, do you use sustainable raw materials and all these things? And we love that, because I think some brands, rather than listen to the customer and use that as an opportunity to engage and actually evolve the brand and to be more aligned. Because what you start doing is you start attracting all these people that share your values. But then when you do that, you're also going to bring these communities that are really critical and also hold you to the values in ways that maybe you haven't done yet. And so those types of experiences are how we said, okay, like, let's see how we can find out what our product life cycle is. And so we started looking for carbon experts that can, we were actually the first apparel brand in Brazil to launch carbon labels too. And it was like shortly after Allbirds launched their carbon label. So we had already been working on it for a long time. And it's just, you know, it was such an amazing opportunity because we built this whole methodology with a global carbon partner that's an expert in this space, but had never done carbon labels for apparel. And so it's really kind of interesting because, you know, if these customers hadn't come and like pushed us to say, like, we know that this is your value because that's why we're here, and why, you know, your brand, that's part of your brand. You have, there's two sides to that, you know, you have to really uphold what you believe in, and then also be open to your community is always going to be ahead of you. They're always going to be more evolved than you are as a brand. So just acknowledging that and saying, like, we're not perfect, but, you know, we're in constant evolution, and the community is a huge asset in helping you evolve and be relevant.
Mm-hmm. That's a great piece of advice. And so in terms of, like, you had mentioned talking to like carbon experts, hiring lawyers and things like that. I mean, what were some of the first, like, it sounds like you and your co-founder did a lot of the branding yourself and a lot of the product development yourself. So what were some of the sort of first like hires or third parties that you invested in?
For sure. So in the beginning, we hired all freelancers to help with like the brand, obviously the first campaigns and stuff we did, we're not going to hire a full-time photographer or, you know, makeup artist or anything. So we had some teams of freelancers that we worked with to help with the brand construction and all of the communication for the launch. But then after that, so we actually launched the company with no employees, which is really crazy. Nobody does that. It was not, you know, we really did everything that we could to get it off the ground without having a huge fixed cost. I think as a bootstrap company, that's like the biggest thing, is just controlling fixed costs and, you know, investing in things that maybe if it works, great, you keep keep investing there, but if it doesn't work, you can cut it off in a month. And hiring people isn't that way. Hiring people is a huge commitment, not just for the company, but also these are real people, and you're, you know, sustaining their lifestyle, and their personal life depends on the job a lot of times. So our first hire was focused on mostly on fulfilling orders, so more operational and having somebody come in. And then our second, I think, was customer service, because my Portuguese is not, at that time, wasn't so amazing. And my co-founder was helping with a lot of that, but it, you know, it ended up becoming almost a full-time job managing questions, especially since it's a new category of product. We got a lot of questions. Oh, well, how does it work? Even questions where we had very clear answers on the website, like, how does it work?
Yeah.
Like, oh, what sizes do you offer? Oh, what, you know, how, like, things is just like, look at the website, but you can't say that. So, so more operational at the beginning, and then, most of our marketing team was freelance, or I was managing it directly for at least the first year. And then we always had, from the beginning, like a legal team, because you have to set up a company, you need some type of legal support for that. PR, which was really important to us as well. And we didn't start really investing a lot in digital marketing until after our stock issues went away. So because we had the backlog, it didn't make sense to be doing ads on Instagram and Facebook until we had our stock back and we had normalized organic demand with our stock. And then we said, okay, now's the time to start investing. And we also hired an external partner to help with digital marketing. So that was huge, I think, accelerator. When we could start that, it really helped accelerate the growth of the business a lot.
And like, when did you start paying yourself? Did you pay yourself before you hired people, or were you like hiring people until you were able to make enough to pay yourself?
Absolutely not. Yeah, we've definitely paid other people before us. I think for me, it took about 2 years for us to take, both my co-founder and I, to take a salary. So it took a really long time. And I would say that most of the investment that we made in the business was our sweat equity, you know, our time that we invested, and not financial investment. So, and that's something where it's super stressful. It's not something I would probably ever want to do again because, you know, you have your savings and you have, you know, especially having worked in a more corporate environment, you know, all these benefits, and to go to a situation where you're really every month, even just not investing in your business necessarily, but investing in your life to just keep things going. It's a huge challenge. So I know a lot of people can't do that. I probably wouldn't want to do it again because I do think it is really stressful. But even now, there are people on the team that we pay more than we pay ourselves. And that's just, you know, we're not anywhere close to kind of a normal founder salary for somebody that's funded. But we're building an amazing business that's growing a lot, and we know that that's a part of the moment that we're in right now, as well. So whether in the future, for example, we decide to take funding, maybe for scaling, and at that time it's a totally different moment for the company, you know, obviously that's something that we can change in the future. But you know, I think as a person, I'm not necessarily financially motivated as much as focused on impact and all the opportunities as well that the companies let me really drive both environmental impact and social impact. And so I'm not that worried about it, but it is something that, you know, if you are, for example, married, or you know, you have to consider how that would affect your whole family and make sure that you have a home environment that's very supportive of that as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you being honest about that, because I think it's, you know, like you said, it's a little bit taboo. I mean, people aren't necessarily talking about that. And it's something that so many people are going through. And, you know, a lot of times I see stuff like, oh, pay yourself first and do this and do that. And it's like, how do you do that when you're really scrambling to just get your products out there? And like you said, I mean, building that reputation and building that brand is so important for the long term. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I think for people who are bootstrapping, it's knowing that it's going to be a longer, slower process, but ideally building it exactly the way you want to without, you know, the investors' input. Okay, question. Jill says, what kind of return do you expect on hiring, marketing, and social help? For reference, I'm paying $1,800 for social media. What's a good expectation on the return? And then Kimberly was asking the same thing about PR too.
Great. No, I think it's important. Some of these things it's important to have KPIs, obviously, for each of the areas that you're focused on. So for social media, for us, it's, community size and engagement rate would be kind of the two biggest key metrics that we look at. And we also look at sales from social channels. But I think that for social media specifically, I would focus more on community size growth and engagement over sales to begin with, because the sales are something that's going to come later. And even now with all the changes in the algorithm, you're probably going to get most of your sales from paid media if you're a new company that doesn't have a big organic or direct demand. And so it's more of an investment in the brand, actually, social media. And in PR, I would look at PR we see PR, a lot of impact on site traffic and direct searches in Google for Pantys, for a brand name. And so PR should reflect in kind of organic forms of traffic, or even if you have affiliate programs, and there are a lot of magazines now that do, they'll do an article where they talk about the 10 best menstrual underwear, and they can put Pantys and they give them a commission for putting Pantys in the article. But obviously we have to be selected to be included in the article to begin with. And we haven't worked so much with affiliate programs, but that's kind of a more performance PR that I think works really well. And Brazil's not there yet, and Europe is kind of getting there, but the US is super advanced in performance PR and affiliate links. So almost, I would say 80% of content that's produced by a lot of media channels are paid links, which is it's almost a little bit depressing too, because you think everything's so commercial. But at least they've tested and they've given the okay from the teams that it's, products that really work and they believe in, which is helpful. But yeah, I think PR, brand strength, site traffic, Google searches would be a really good metric if you don't have those affiliate links.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so weird to even I feel weird recommending things sometimes. I was just about to recommend something, and then I was like, well, this feels weird because I get a code that I can share with people to get it. But that's the idea, is that the good quality products are going to be rising to the top of those recommendations, whether they're paid or not, because they're still good quality, and people will still want to talk about them. They're not going to just, talk about a product that's not very good just so they can try to get some money back for it. It's
No,
you need to
sure.
believe.
You would destroy all your friendships. You started getting them to buy stuff that they don't need, that doesn't work. Yeah, exactly.
Cue every multi-level marketing thing I've ever been invited to.
Yeah.
Oh man, it drives me crazy. Okay, so I have another question here. What were some of the hardest lessons you learned when you were building your company early on?
So I think so many different lessons. Let's see. I think one of the biggest lessons about hiring people, I think now, because we have about 50 people in the team now, and we're in a stage where we're hiring a lot, and choosing who you want on your team is really, really important. And I've even been listening to a lot of podcasts of different founders. And I think that we went through a certain phase, especially during COVID, where a lot of e-commerces grew a lot. We also grew quite a bit. It's very easy to say all of a sudden now I need to structure my team, and you're going to build a whole team and you hire a bunch of people at one time. And I think that can be helpful, but managing people has taken almost as much time as doing a lot of things by myself. But it's important to build a team so that you can have them operating more independently. And but I think that in general, hiring slow is a really good piece of advice, to kind of let somebody come in, see what happens to the dynamic, and then let another person come in and then see what happens. Because sometimes when you have a lot of people that start at one time, it can create a lot of changes too quickly. And yeah, exactly. Hire slow and fire fast. Exactly. And I think when you hire people, focus on like a 90-day plan or some type of plan of what exactly, be very specific, because sometimes you think like you get so excited that you got the right person and they're coming in and you just like let them hit the ground running. But I think being really clear about expectations in the first 90 days is essential for success on both sides, both in terms of what is the routine of meetings going to look like, what kind of like numbers are you looking for in terms of results in the first, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, looking at things like attitude and how they interact with the rest of the team is also really important. So we've had a number of people that have been amazing performers, but have kind of a bad attitude or don't collaborate well with other people that we've had to let go, because at the end of the day, the culture of the company is more important than the performance. And that's why I say like culture eats strategy for lunch is like a phrase. Like the culture and the dynamic of the team is way more important than having like really smart, productive people. And that's something that it's hard as a founder to say that and to think like I'm gonna like let a talented person go because they're creating dynamic problems or maybe they don't share the values of the organization. So I think a lot of the biggest learnings have been around kind of team and people and at the beginning the founder is really the culture and drives the values of the company, because it's different. Culture is different than just values. It's different than just what you believe. It's also how you make decisions and like processes and how you see what's more important. Like, is a consumer problem more important than a conversion issue? Like if I have a problem with the site, how do I choose? And so culture is about helping make those decisions and empowering your employees to be able to make decisions in a way that are aligned with what you think is best for the business. And so that's been one of the biggest challenges, and I think still a challenge that we have right now in scaling the company. And we have an HR person that's more focused on kind of the paperwork side, but we don't have like a really strong like culture person. And during COVID too, I think a lot of integration and like getting, doing events and stuff with the team was really hard because, we weren't really gathering people together as much, and like everybody's wearing masks. And so it's a different type of engagement. I'm trying to think on the other side, probably the other biggest challenge that I've had has been around communication, and that since we're a product and a company that focuses on behavior change and inspiring people to go out of their comfort zones, try a product that they've never tried before, especially for intimate health, which, it's most women use this whatever product their mom gave them when they first menstruated, and that's what they use their whole lives. And so we see like even geographically huge differences. Like Brazil is a pad market, the US is a tampon market, Germany is a tampon market, Italy is a pad market. Every market's really different in terms of what people prefer. And so there's a lot of fear around trying different intimate products. And there's kind of this psychological barrier of, what if it leaks or what if it doesn't work? And so we see a lot of social proof working really well for us, and people saying like, I've tried it, and a lot of word of mouth too, which we try to accelerate, but that's so slow. We can't wait for word of mouth to grow our business in a decade. So,
Yeah.
So we've been looking for a lot of ways to accelerate word of mouth and also focus on these challenges of, is it hygienic? Does it feel like a diaper? These kind of like very basic concerns that people have when they hear about the product. And even today, I did a call with the biggest TV group in Brazil, Globo. They're amazing. And the whole team was like, we love Pantys. We love the products. We love the concept. We love the brand. And I was like, has anybody here tried the product? And nobody had tried the product. And I was just kind of like, what is the barrier? Like everybody wants, and maybe it's financial, that, even though it's a product that is more economical over the long term because it lasts for 4 or 5 years, it is a more expensive upfront cost. And so, maybe it's that creates a barrier. But I would say that's still our biggest challenge, is this kind of adoption and like risk of trial. And, it's something that we still work with a lot today, and how we can, in our communication, like, and every person is different what their concern is. Is it hygiene? Is it comfort? Is it financial? So.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you have like personas defined about your target audience, and like what are their like hangups?
Yeah, so we actually look less at geographic. I don't like as much or demographic profiling. We look more at psychographic, which is kind of what are her affinities or what does she like or not like, and like what movements is she interested in. So we have kind of like a more of like a spectrum, like a map that we make of our customer persona, rather than define specific different personas that we could work around. And so even like other brands that she likes or other, and the truth is that as a brand that evolves a lot, because the people that when we launched Pantys, our first kind of low hanging fruit as a brand was like anybody that's concerned about sustainability, anybody that has is in the upper financial class that's more educated also. And like vegans, people that were really like already had a lifestyle where they had made sacrifices or made other types of adjustments to be more sustainable. And now we're kind of entering more this mass market. It's a different segment of the population where we're kind of like, okay, all the people that care about sustainability have already tried our product, basically. So now we're trying to send different messages, like, and we see for the first purchase, sustainability is the major trigger, but for the second purchase, it's comfort. Mm-hmm. And so we do these surveys even to understand from our audience, like, why did you purchase for the first time? Oh, why did you come back and purchase from us? And what did you see as the primary benefit of the product? And it's interesting because comfort really is, at the end of the day, the major benefit that the product delivers. And I think that sustainability is a nice trigger to help her inspire her to make that change. But after trying the product, that's the biggest thing that people say, like, it's just amazing how much more comfort it brings. And even people that are tampon users or haven't used menstrual cups, and they'll say like, oh, I'll use Pantys on all my days, but on my heavier days with a complementary product. But then on my lighter days, I'll just use Pantys because it's more comfortable and it's easier. I don't have to be like worrying about changing anything, and I'm consuming less products. Yeah, so that's kind of, I think that your persona has to evolve over time, really, as if you're growing as a company.
Mm-hmm. I like what you're saying about like the difference between why people buy originally versus repeat purchases, because I think it's really similar for products. Like we have a couple of food founders here, and for food products, like it has to taste good. I mean, they might pick it up because it looks interesting or the name of the flavor sounds cool, or because it's like an upcycled product or whatever, but when they eat it, it has to taste good. And that is what's going to make them talk about it again and go back and buy it again. So I think those, the development of the product along with the brand is, kind of that play of like getting those initial customers and then getting the repeat purchase.
No, absolutely. My sister's a vegan, so I've learned a lot about the vegan food market from her, and it's like, it has to taste amazing. Like people aren't going to eat it just because it's plant-based. It has to taste amazing too. So that's the same thing with our product. Exactly. Yeah. It has to be an amazing product at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just had one other question, and then we can open it up to see if anybody else has anything. But so what is some advice that you have for somebody who wants to maintain 100% ownership and wants to bootstrap without taking outside investment?
I think my biggest suggestion, keep fixed costs low, as low as possible. I think that's the biggest thing. So it's very easy to take on things that, and especially as a founder, like to say, oh, let's do events and let's do, all these. At the beginning, we did a lot of stuff like that. We did events where we spent, thousands of dollars, and then we were kind of like, what was the return on that event? Like nothing, basically. Like we reached like 20 people and, had a great experience with them. But so it's very tempting, but there has to be kind of a discipline around like what actually is going to bring a return to your business, and not necessarily do things that are just fun and cool, which it's really hard to have that discipline, but it is important. And I would say, if you want to maintain 100% ownership of your business, really focus on customer feedback, really be very open to. And so, for example, when we first started giving our products to people, we got a lot of feedback, which was amazing before we launched the business. But even after we launched and we started getting amazing feedback, people say, oh, I love the product. And I said, oh, I always ask, like, well, what could we do better? Like, what would you improve? If you could improve something, what would you improve? Because as a founder, you always, it's not that you have a fear of negative feedback, but it's always nice to feel the praise of positive feedback. But at the same time, what's going to actually help you win in the market and be successful is understanding even the smallest things that you could do better. So sometimes it's things like, oh, I got this email after my purchase where like most of it made, but I didn't understand this one point. Like, that didn't make sense to me. And it's kind of like, that's great feedback. That's amazing. Like, we're going to go in with a team and we'll redo that. And because really not just the product, but every aspect of the experience should be, amazing. And it should reinforce your brand. It should reinforce your values. And if you can do that, you don't necessarily need a huge team and you don't necessarily need a lot of investment and money. That's stuff that actually, you can do with nothing. It's just taking the time to actually, if you're in e-commerce, taking the time, call 10 customers that purchased and ask them what their feedback is. Like, do things that aren't scalable. It doesn't have to always be through surveys, because sometimes you get both the quantitative feedback through surveys, but getting really rich individual feedback, it can really help be the difference between you like doing amazing and, being okay as a business. So that would be some of my biggest suggestions. And I think, the market's going to change a lot. So I think that as a bootstrap business, that is a risk. It's something that I think about now a lot, especially with the global markets are kind of changing this year quite a bit. That it is also a risk to be 100% owner in your business, because your business can be valued at X one day and the next day Y and the next day, and so it can, and the markets will change a lot. And so just keeping that in mind is really important, that, try not to beat yourself up about it. If, things are going great and then things are harder and then things will go great again. And that's just a part of sometimes how business works. So try not to get too stressed in the moment when something happens. And we saw over the past year how many differences in, like toilet paper is out of stock, and then masks went crazy. And then all the people that made a lot of money on masks are making nothing. And so it's just, the market is very dynamic. And I think it's about really focusing, staying calm, not trying to be too reactive and stressed, and just finding the opportunities at that time that are going to help move the business forward.
Awesome. And Emily, I think, is a beacon of calm. There's so much going on, but yeah. No, I love it. So do you guys have any specific questions for Emily about bootstrapping or anything else about the company while we have her? Feel free to come off mute, or you can.
I was going to ask, and I've got a company kind of some of what you're talking about, where it's kind of that weird niche industry that nobody likes to talk about. So I work with breast milk. Like, is there anything you did in building it and trying to get some of the awareness and the education of the people either you're selling to or working with, to understand what it is that you're doing that they may not have experienced it themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say when you're building a new market or trying to teach people how to do things differently, it's really important to be a content creator as a brand. And so I actually did a talk about this on Tuesday this week, but like digital content for me is a product that we create and actually a service that we provide to our community to help create and build stronger relationships with them, provide education, provide a meaningful contact like before, during, and in between orders. And so if you're like, for example, breast milk, I'm thinking like a blog or, mini videos that are highly educational, or, any type of content that's going to help explain and educate your community, I think has a lot of value. And it's kind of a soft sell, you don't come in just selling directly. You come in and saying like, we're about a movement and we're about, this evolution, or we're about supporting new moms, or we're about, and then the product comes into that, but the product isn't the focus of the whole concept and the brand. And I think that that's something that builds a lot of credibility with the community, and it's actually easier to get people to engage first around content and education and movement than it is like a product play at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it's really goes along with like building a little bit of authority in that realm that you're talking about. And so when you're constantly creating content about what it's like to be a new mom, or what it's like to breastfeed, or what it's like to pump, or then you start becoming sort of like an expert on that topic, and people start seeing you as like, oh, this person is like knows what they're talking about. They're always posting things about new moms and things like that. I was even thinking like little videos from new moms that are struggling with dealing with what to do with their breast milk, how to store it and all that. But yeah, because that's like a way to, like you were asking Jill about how to connect with people that may not have had that experience before. And so that, I think then that can also carry over to other products too, if it's something you haven't tried. I know Javian is on here today. He has breadfruit chips and some breadfruit products. And so, a lot of people in the US haven't had breadfruit before. And so, that's another one where it's like, a lot about the education and the storytelling that I think comes into play of, inspiring people to check it out.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think that the content is really important. And I think, thinking about like what, even with the breadfruit, I love that idea, like being really ambitious about, that should be in like every Whole Foods in the US. And you don't have to have investors to get there necessarily. And I think that we were really ambitious at even like, we went and set up meetings with the Galeries Lafayette and with the Bon Marché and with Selfridges, all these retailers that were huge when we were like 2 years old as a company. I mean, it's just crazy. But I think, and those things take a really long time. So it's saying like, maybe I'm not ready to sell to Whole Foods today, but maybe I'm going to start like trying to knock on the doors and get them to try my products, because you never know. It could take a year to get somebody to say an okay on your product, but then you've spent all that time building that relationship. And it's the same with B2C consumers. Like the consumer, they might spend a year consuming your content before they buy your product or, engage with you in a commercial way.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. Okay, does anybody have any other questions for Emily? A piece of mail just slid under my door. I think it was for my children. Okay. Javian shared the website if anybody needs bread.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's so great to have you guys joining us today. And Emily, thank you so much for sharing honestly about your journey, what it's like bootstrapping. I know that it definitely has its challenges, and there's a lot of things that people don't talk about when it comes to, dealing with investors or not. So appreciate your honesty and sharing some of your insights today.
No, well, thank you guys so much for the time. And it was a very intimate session, which is amazing. I always love engaging with other founders, and super available, Caitlin, if there's any questions or if you guys want to talk later one-on-one about any specific issues or challenges, would love to stay connected. So thanks so much for the opportunity and time today, and look forward to talking to you all soon. Awesome.
Thanks so much. And we are so excited to find Pantys in the US soon on Amazon.
Very soon. I'll let you know.
Yay!
So.
Awesome. Okay. Well, have a great day, everyone.
Talk soon. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.